Welcome to the Frisco Skirt Sew-Along. I'm Amanda Carestio, editor for Sew News and co-host of the Sew and Tell podcast. Today I'm going to walk you through making this simple paneled skirt. It's the perfect spring sew, but it's got some great techniques built in, like French seams and buttonholes that will give you a good chance to practice. And it's comfy too, with that elastic back waist. Let's go ahead and jump into fabric recommendations. For this skirt, you are going to want to use woven fabric, anything from a drapey rayon to cottons and linens. Drapey is definitely better, but that can add to the difficulty level of this project, so keep that in mind when you are selecting your fabric. Today I'll be using a really pretty rayon blend with the nice floral print. It is super drapey, so that's going to make it a little bit more difficult, but we'll go slow and steady, and I'll share my tips for that when we get to that point. For fabric yardage, it does depend on the fabric width that you're using and the size that you're making, but at most you'll need 2 yards of fabric. Don't forget scrappy options and color blocking. They're kind of built in with the design of this skirt with those panels, so have fun with it. The skirt pattern runs sizes 0 to 34. Be sure to use the sizing chart on the pattern and check the finished measurements, but they do not include the elastic, so keep that in mind. You may be able to size down, just make sure that you accommodate your hip measurement. The skirt has a generous A-line silhouette built in, so there's a lot of ease, so it should be an easy fit for you. The other notions you'll need is some 2-inch wide elastic. You'll need some buttons. You'll need 8, and you want anywhere between 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch. And here I've got some nice vintage options from my stash. I'll have to eventually choose a button for this skirt. But also keep in mind the weight of the buttons that you're using. This is a drapey fabric. If you add really heavy buttons to it, that's going to affect how it hangs on the body. So pick lightweight button options if you have them. You'll also need a little bit of interfacing for the waistband. And I've brought my trusty Microtex needle, which is great for these finer fabrics, and it will make for a much easier sewing experience. So that's a tip for you. To get started, go ahead and print and tile your pattern. Now, if you want to add length to your skirt, I'm going to show you how to do that on these panel pieces. You don't want to just add length to the bottom of the skirt. As you can see, it's got this nice curved hem, and if you just add to that, it's going to be hard to preserve that. So I've cut into the skirt pattern here about 3 inches up from the bottom, and I've added 3 inches in length here. And I do that for each of the panel pieces of the skirt. My other quick tip for this is to use leftover Christmas wrapping paper that has 1-inch grid lines on the back. That makes it really easy to add those 3 inches to each of those panels. Once those are how you want them, go ahead and cut your fabric out. Do pay attention to the grain line markings on these pattern pieces. They're going to have you place your pattern pieces a little bit askew, but that is to take advantage of the drape of the fabric, and it's going to help the skirt hang much better in the end. So just keep that in mind when you're laying out your pattern pieces. It is kind of important, so I wouldn't skip that step. Finally, consider labels for your pattern pieces. There are quite a few pattern pieces for this skirt because there are panels. So use some Post-it notes or whatever your system is and go ahead and mark those so you don't get confused later. Next up, we will move into constructing the main skirt body. Stick around.